So one of the issues, as you can see there, you can't run a dizzy. So like I've said before, I run a trigger system, crank and auxiliary pulley trigger. So we need to get rid of that dizzy, but we also need to be able to keep the shaft for the oil pump. So what I usually do is what I've done in the other one was I just cut it down and capped it. So we've still got the rod and everything in there. So this is a old EFI dizzy, you know, with the Hall effect sensor in it. It's been sitting in parts bin for ages, so I don't mind cutting it down. But like I say, we want to keep the shaft and we want to keep the gear. Gear runs off the auxiliary shaft, the auxiliary pulley. Turns the shaft, and that in turn, you know, turns your oil pump, and you kind of want oil, so we have to keep the majority of this. And I think I cut mine up here somewhere so that we've still got enough room to clamp it on up the top. Then I just found a bolt big enough, screw in the top. It's tight, like it's taking a lot of pressure to get it in there. I'll cut it off and sand it flat. That'll seal that hole up nicely. So that's what you're left with. Nice little sand up on the top. It'll all get a clean up and a lick of paint when it all goes back together, but that in there, that's it. That's all you need. Gear to drive the oil pump, blocked off. No oil comes out, and this is much nicer than the way I did mine. I cut a piece of alloy and then tapped 3 holes and screwed it down. It still looks like shit. This is a much nicer, easier, quicker, free way of deleting a dizzy and keeping the oil drive. And then that goes in there. That goes in there, seats down, so now the auxiliary drive will drive the oil pump. Like I said before, don't worry about this block. This is just for mocking up. Everything gets cleaned and checked and gone through before it gets assembled. Then this little bit here goes on there. And the last bit that keeps it in there. If I can find a bloody hole. So there. That's a dizzy deleted, but we still have oil drive. Now we'll look at the idle air control. So I would say the hardest part of doing this conversion is finding all the bits. If you can find a complete intact GTIR inlet manifold with everything on it, fuel injection, this cap here, because this is the most common thing they're bought for, and then the rest is scrapped. They use these for plenums on all sorts of ITVs. Throttle position sensor, all of the linkages, the idle air control, if that's all intact, then just buy the one you can buy, because trying to source bits is hard. So I've had a bit of a scouting around, and strange enough, one of the guys at work had this. So this is the part we need that bolts onto the underside of the GTI inlet. Someone's modified this and put a box on it, and even older, like generic Nissan airflow idle air control valve. But all we want is that block there, and Nissan being Nissan, someone's put a plate on top of this, but this one here is your idle air control, and then that's something to do with air conditioning as well, but I removed that from the other one and actually had to trim it all off here on mine, but I might not have to on this one. So you got your oil screw at the end, which is a lot nicer than the one that was on mine, but this is actually off a Primera. Not sure what Primera, but it's off a Primera. We might have to block up a hose, but same plug, same idle air control, and you can tell by the bolt pattern it will bolt on there. It just faces a different way, so a bit more messing around and figuring stuff out, but having the idle air control is really nice, because you can just change it by the ECU. It's at certain temperatures you can just start the car and walk away. You don't have to try and feather the accelerator until it's warm enough to keep running. You can just set it so that at different temperature settings the idle changes, and it is much nicer. It's something I really wanted when I did mine, and I'm really glad I did it. So these are the only bits that we really need. That there bolts on the underside, so this is the underside of the inlet manifold. So that bit there bolts on. That pipe goes to there. You've got the two here that are this one is the air that comes into here, and then this one here branches off and feeds these two, and that's your idle air. But as you can see, it's already getting tight under there. So you've got the throttle position sensor, you've got the plate for the idle air control, and then you've also, of the engine right here, is the oil filter. So this one being a different one to the one I used, that sits that way around. I need to block this pipe off like I did on mine. I'm going to have to cut this one off and block this pipe as well. Then that can bolt on there. It's kind of out of the way. Now you can see that on there, that bolted on there. The plug itself wants to hit straight on there. So what I might have to do is, there's always something to figure out, is take this off and turn it around so the plug actually comes out this way. That's what I'll have to do. I'll also remove that as well, and then we'll get stuck into that. I also removed this water pipe that runs through here. I removed it. I haven't used it. We'll just get rid of all the junk that we don't need and figure out what we do need. Okay, so that's the base plate with that hole blocked off. I just found a bung or a rod thick enough to go in there, and I hammered the shit out of it until it's in there. Sanded it back. Same with that one there. They're not leaking, they're not going anywhere. I turned that around, flipped it 90 degrees or 180 degrees so that it still bolts in, but the plug is now not facing the plenum itself. And obviously I'm going to have to get all new hardware because I got none with this, so we'll have to figure that out, but I'll put it back together and see how it goes. So that's it, all back together. Works out well. So this is the fresh air coming from the inlet plenum, comes straight into here. The idle air control valve operates this. This comes off and goes into these two, and that sorts your idle out. Now I use one of these on mine. I just put it in there and just teed it off. I think I went around that way. Ran a hose over to this one, then teed it off to those two, and that bag was like 10 of them for $10. So if you've got all the bits and pieces and a little bit of know-how, then maybe to set up the idle air control on this for a Pinto might cost you a couple of bucks. Not bad. So with all of this over here, this plug was right where the oil filter wanted to be, no matter where you put it. So I've moved it over here to another bolt hole. This one here can still go to here now. I just turned this one over, just flipped it around, so that to there. This one can come out to here and then tee off over to this one. I've had to remove this, and I've blocked that off with a bolt. And I'll show you how much room you've got for an oil filter. So that there should clear the engine mount. It's very close to where the oil filter wanted to be, but this is a Pinto oil filter, and because I have an alternator on mine here and the idle air control, I run a 1600 crossflow oil filter, which is a lot smaller diameter, just longer. So we'll go to a 1600 crossflow filter. I still might see if I can find another one of these idle air controls with the plug right on the end, because if I can, then it'll make life easier and I'll put it back over here. But for now, that should work nicely. But yeah, it soon starts to fill up under there and you start to run out of room, but it's all doable. You just got to have a play with shit. Thanks for watching.